Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, Tuttle. Hello, Janelle. Hello, Heldy. Hello, Jamie. Sorry, we had a bit of a technical issue in the pre-show. My microphone would not unmute. It was not getting the correct amount of power. So we are okay. Just give me a second here. Obviously, dealing with a technical issue, I need to finish out sending out the tweet and stuff. But we're getting started here in just a second. We are embarking together on a journey today. That is going to be very, very interesting. I'm going to attempt to predict the most important game for all 32 teams in the NFL because that's why. I just thought it was interesting to me to try to predict the game that is going to be the most important, most consequential on every team's schedule ahead of the 2023 NFL season. So that is what we are going to do today. I will tell you the reason behind wanting to do this in just a second. But let me send out the tweet. Everybody get your trusty water, coffee, tea, soda, whatever you're drinking to start the morning, and we will get started in just a minute or two. All right, folks, we are back. Everything's ready to go. We'll go to the big screen here. Tweets out, Discord messages out. We are ready to go here on a Monday. Jamie says, imagine our audio guy not having audio. In fact, I was very confused. There's a weird problem. Everything's plugged in the same spot it normally is. Camera wasn't working this morning. I got that fixed ahead of the show. Did not know that the audio had power, so we just changed it to another USB port here on the computer, and hopefully that will allow us to get through this show today, and we won't have any problems during the show. But hello, everybody. Hope everybody had a great weekend. Hope everybody enjoyed whatever they did over the weekend. I know for me it was yard work, but it was nice to get outside, get some fresh air, and enjoy some time. The little lull that we have here between football games getting underway. But we've got a fun one here today for you. We're going to predict the most important game for all 32 teams in the National Football League, and I will tell you that there's a reason why we're going down this path, why this is the topic for today's show. I saw a story in The Athletic, and I'll tell this story again when we do the podcast recording, but I saw a story in The Athletic that said predicting the most must-watch game for all 32 teams, and it looked through the schedule and did that. And that's easy. You can look at the buzz that a game could generate, and you can be like, oh, that's the one we're going to pick. I've decided to make it a little bit more challenging here and try to predict the game that is the most important. And listen, this will be interesting to see what we all define as most important, what we all define as important for each of these 32 teams, because they're all at different stages as franchises. And so I think it's going to be a fun little look, a different way to look at the schedule ahead of the 2023 season. So if you guys are ready, I've got all the things up that I need in order to be able to do the show. I've got schedules up. I've got the YouTube up. We've got the chat. We are all ready to go. Got the trusty water. So why don't we get this show on the road? And welcome into the Monday edition of the TDN Daily podcast. Chris Schubert back with you here once again on the show. Hope everybody is having a fantastic start to their Monday. Hope everybody had a great weekend. We've got a fun one here for you on the show today. We are embarking on a very challenging journey, a journey that we may look back on at the end of the season and think, what the heck were we thinking when we had this conversation? But we are now, with the schedule being released, we're going to go through all 32 teams scheduled here on the show today, and we are going to predict the most important game for all 32 teams. And I saw a story in The Athletic this morning when doing research for the show, trying to figure out what we wanted to do. And I saw a story in which they picked the most must-watch game for all 32 teams, which I thought, okay, you look at the marquee matchups, you look at maybe great divisional matchups as well, and you pick the game that's going to potentially generate all this buzz, all the narratives, going to bring in all the people to be able to watch these games, whether it's a nationally televised game, clear the schedule on Sunday night. You got to sit down for this game game between these two teams. And I thought it would be interesting if we went through each team's schedule and decided way ahead of time in May, before we even know what the final 53-man rosters look like, before we even have any sort of, injury updates or anything like that, that we decide which game is the most important game for all 32 teams. I thought that'd be a very fun little exercise to start the week. So that is exactly what we are going to do here on the Second Screen Experience. We've got all of the schedules up and ready to go for the show. So very, very excited to do this here today. So I've got everything open here, and we will start in the AFC East, and we'll go back and forth between AFC East, AFC, NFC, and get through them all. And for the Buffalo Bills, and again, I think what's going to be so much fun about this before we dive into it is for each team, important is going to take on a different meaning, right? Each important is going to mean something different for the Buffalo Bills than it does for the Indianapolis Colts, that it does for the Arizona Cardinals, that it does for the New Orleans Saints. It is going to take on a different meaning for all of these teams, and so I think being able to contextualize maybe a little bit where these franchises are at is also, I think, the fun of doing this project. So live YouTube chat, you know the drill. You can play along at home. You want to pull the schedule up, and if you want to maybe debate a game or two that you think should probably be in the conversation, if it's not the one that I pick. Again, I'm doing this live. We have not done a ton of pre-research for this, so this should be a lot of fun. I will say I did have the Bills schedule up the longest because it's the one that's sitting here on my screen ahead of time, and I think the game is very, very simple for the most important game for the Buffalo Bills. It is Sunday, November 5th. That's how far into the schedule I'm willing to go when they go on the road to play Cincinnati in Cincinnati, Ohio, Sunday Night Football on NBC. That is the game for me that is the most important for the Buffalo Bills, because we look at them in this rarefied air of being the elite of the elite in the Super Bowl contenders. One of the teams that they have not been able to overcome in this process, one of the teams that they have not been able to get past has been the Cincinnati Bengals. And when they had a regular season game against this team, the Damar Hamlin game, they were on the road to being blown out in that game on the road in Cincinnati. Cincinnati was playing a much better brand of football in that football game. They were more than likely going to just roll over the Bills. They were just cruising in that game. So to me, you want to be considered still in that tier of Super Bowl contenders. You want to still be considered the elite of the elite in the AFC. This is a game. Now, they got all those divisional games that you can talk about as well, because the Dolphins are going to be tough. The Jets are going to be tough, right? They've got Kansas City and Philadelphia on their schedule. But when it comes to the power structure in the AFC, you got to show it to me. You got to show me you can get past these teams. Cincinnati, been to a Super Bowl. Kansas City, been to a couple Super Bowls. Those are the teams that you are chasing in the AFC. Those are the teams that I need to see you beat, and Cincinnati is one of them. On the road in Cincinnati, Sunday Night Football is the game that we are picking for the Buffalo Bills. We look at the Miami Dolphins, and again, I think all of the same things that we just said about the Miami Dolphins can apply to the Buffalo Bills from the context of we can pick any divisional matchup. I'm going to try not to fall into that bucket for most teams. Well, there is one team in this division where I am going to pick a divisional matchup because I think it's very important for the tone to be set very quickly for this specific team. But we know last year, when Tua was healthy, this Miami Dolphins team, specifically this Miami Dolphins offense, was basically unstoppable. This was one of the best offenses in the National Football League. Tua was playing as one of the elite quarterbacks in the National Football League. Those were the statistics that he was putting up. And so the health of Tua is going to be a major concern here. But for the sake of this, exercise, we're going to assume that Tua is healthy throughout the season, right? We're just going to assume. For me, a game in late October is a game where you can check a major box. You're going on the road to Lincoln Financial Field, and you were taking on the defending NFC champions, the Philadelphia Eagles. If you want us to think that last year not a fluke, last year was not a mirage, that is how good your offense is, that is how good you are as a team, then you can go into Philadelphia and you can compete with the Philadelphia Eagles. And so that is going to be a great litmus test, and you're probably going to hear me use that phrase a lot throughout the course of this show, because that's kind of what we're trying to gauge for some of these teams, is where is their first opportunity on the schedule to face a little bit of resistance, to face a challenge, to face a tough task, for them to be able to answer some of the questions that we have about all of these teams. And so for me, I know they opened the season at the Chargers. They played that team pretty close last year. I think it was, a Sunday Night Football game that they played? I think they won that game, in fact. So they've done that. They've played close with Buffalo. They've beaten Buffalo. I mean, I've got answers on the schedule. The first, I think, line of demarcation for this team is at Philadelphia on October 22nd, is the game that I would pick as the most important for the Miami Dolphins. Now we switch to maybe what would be the toughest team to pick this for in this division. And that is the New England Patriots. And they've got a tough schedule. You look at the early parts of their schedule. Philadelphia to open the year, Miami in week 2, at the Jets in week 3, at Dallas in week 4, New Orleans in week 5. Those first 5 games are against teams that are all viewed in this very similar bucket of, we think those are playoff teams. Philadelphia defending NFC champs. Miami, a team that made the playoffs a year ago. We know what the expectations are on the New York Jets. We always know what the expectations are on the Dallas Cowboys. We know what expectations are put on the New Orleans Saints in a division that's wide open. Their first 5 games are against 5 very, very positively looked at teams when it comes to the playoff picture. And so you're going to pick one of those games. And the game that I'm going to pick is week 3 at the New York Jets, because they get the first 2 games at home. I don't know if we're necessarily going to pick them to win either of those games. We might be able to pick them to win Miami at home, but Philly's going to be a tough task, even though they're going on the road to Foxborough. I don't think we're going to be picking Mac Jones and the New England Patriots. But week 3, on the road, a team that Bill has owned in his career, a team that Bill has owned recently. It's been 7+ years since the Jets won that, since the Jets have won a game against the New England Patriots. And so I look at this and say, can you go on the road and make a statement against a team that everybody looks at as a contender in the AFC, that everybody, now that they've got Aaron Rodgers, is putting them in that rarefied air, even though they haven't gotten there yet? Can they go in there and knock off the New York Jets, or do they go in there and do they get run over by the New York Jets, and everything kind of gets put in its place when it comes to this division and the way that we look at this team? And so that would be the game that I would pick for the New England Patriots. And for the Jets, again, I know I said I wasn't going to pick divisional games. I'm going to pick 2 in a row here, but this is a big one. Because for me, there is a lot of buzz, there's a lot of noise, the narratives are very large about what the New York Jets can do this season and where people are putting them in the echelon of the AFC, because now there's a guy wearing number 8 named Aaron Rodgers playing quarterback for the New York Jets. They are being put in a different tier, maybe not necessarily a tier they deserve to be in right now, but a tier that they are being put in specifically because of who their quarterback is. And so because of that, and because of the division that they play in, that week 1 game at home against the Buffalo Bills is the most important game for the New York Jets. Because if they are able to, from the word go out and say, yeah, we are for real. We are going to take it to the Buffalo Bills. We are going to beat the team that everybody is picking to win our division. Aaron Rodgers does look like the guy that won back-to-back MVPs. Aaron Rodgers does look like a guy that at 39, almost 40 years old, can lead a team back to another Super Bowl. If he's able to answer those questions, if they're able to take care of the Bills and they start the year 1-0 and they do so because of Aaron Rodgers, then the narrative, the hype train is going to completely leave the station. But if they lose that game, if they lose to the Bills and things are off to a slow start, then those questions are going to be asked. Aaron Rodgers too old. Is this team ready for prime time? Is this team, was the narrative and the hype too much? That is what's going to come out of week 1 for the New York Jets. So that is the game that I would be picking for the New York Jets as the most important one on their schedule. We now transition over to the NFC side of things, and we're almost 10 minutes into the show, so we're on a fantastic pace to be able to get through this in a very, very interesting time matter. But we move on to the Dallas Cowboys. And again, it's easy. You can just pick games that are against premium opponents, right? They've got Philly twice on their schedule, and so those games are obviously going to be considered important, because if they're going to want to win the division, they're going to probably at worst have to split those games. But again, I'm going to try to pick a different game, but know that I understand the importance of those Philadelphia games in the idea of winning a division. But Dallas, not just interested in winning a division. We know Jerry Jones. We know what the motivations are for those teams. We know what the aspirations, we know what the expectations are for those teams. It's not just good enough to win a division, make the playoffs, and play a round or 2 in the playoffs. The expectation for these football teams, the Dallas Cowboys, is to go far into the playoffs and to make a legitimate playoff and a legitimate Super Bowl run. Well, to me, you've got a great opportunity very early in the season to make a statement against one of the upper echelon teams in the NFC. In the early part of the schedule, they've got the Giants and the Jets. They get the Cardinals and the Pats. It's a pretty weak schedule for them to maybe be able to rack up some wins in the early part. But Sunday night, October 8th, against the San Francisco 49ers in Levi's Stadium, yeah, That's the most important game for the Dallas Cowboys. Let's see you go on the road. Let's see you go to a team that people are going to be picking to not only win their division, but to be there in the mix in the NFC Championship game once again because of the coaching, because of what they're able to do with the quarterback position, the way the rest of their roster plays out, the elite defense. Can you go on the road and can you showcase to the world, we can hang with this team. We can compete with the San Francisco 49ers. We can figure them out on defense. We can go into Levi Stadium and we can come up with an offensive game plan to attack the San Francisco defense and give us a chance. Our defense is going to be able to do enough to stop Kyle Shanahan. Can he answer those questions? Because those are the questions you're going to have to answer in the playoffs. Coaching's a big part of the playoffs. Adjustments, being able to come up with a great game plan. Kyle Shanahan's the best at it. That's why he's been able to make it to NFC Championship games with maybe some subpar quarterback play at times. No offense to Brock Purdy, but Brock Purdy comes in. They don't lose a single regular season game once Brock Purdy becomes the starter. They go to an NFC title game. Why? Well, Brock Purdy played well enough to be able to win football games, but also a great job coaching from Kyle Shanahan. So can the Dallas Cowboys go in there and win the coaching battle? There's a lot of questions about Mike McCarthy. There's a first indicator there very early in the season of an opportunity for them to be able to answer some of those questions. The New York Giants, next up here on the list, and this is an interesting team to pick for, right? Because they play well enough to finish third in the division, make the playoffs, have a wild card spot, and so because of that, they get a more difficult schedule because of where they finish and being a playoff team. And again, they've got some tough games on their schedule. They've got the 2 games against Philly, as we've mentioned. They have to go to Buffalo. They have to go to Miami. They have to go to San Francisco. I'm just listing the games that I think we should all consider when having this conversation. I don't want to just necessarily pick San Francisco again. And also, it's a short week game in week 3. It's Thursday night. It's at San Francisco. No matter what happens in that game, I don't think we're going to read a lot into San Francisco. We know the grittiness that this team is going to have. So to me, this is what I look at. This is a home game, and this is a game that they should win. And if we think this team, now their first 3 weeks are Dallas, at Arizona, and at San Francisco. That's a tough schedule. If we think that this team can repeat the success that they had last year, I'd like to see how they handle. And maybe this isn't the most important game. Maybe you'll disagree with me here. But Monday, October 2nd, Monday Night Football, the New York Giants are hosting the Seattle Seahawks. I think everybody kind of feels very similarly about these teams. They have bridge answers at quarterback. Both quarterbacks got some small, medium-sized extensions here in the offseason to come back to their teams. Geno Smith returning to New York once again. Team that he played for in the Giants. You got Geno Smith. You got Daniel Jones. It's Monday Night Football. I think we view these teams very similarly in the power structure of the NFC, and so we can get an answer about these teams. We can get an answer on, are the Giants as good as they were a year ago? Are they able to win games like this that they probably should win? Are they able to welcome in a team like Seattle and be able to beat Geno Smith and the Seattle Seahawks? So again, we're going to try to be unique here because I could say, oh yeah, Thursday night at San Francisco is the game most important. They got to win. But to me, a big-time primetime marquee matchup at home on Monday Night Football early in the season is going to be a great litmus test. There it is again for those of you playing TDN Daily Bingo at home. It's a great litmus test to see if this team can do some of the same stuff that they did a year ago. The Philadelphia Eagles. This is fun because this is a team that won the NFC last year, went to the Super Bowl, had a legitimate chance to win the Super Bowl. And so this is, you could pick anything here. Any of these games you could pick as the most important. But because of where they're at in their life cycle, there are certain games you're just going to immediately rule out. We know what the expectations are for this team. And so I look at the schedule, and I see coming out of the bye late in the season, you go to Kansas City, you host Buffalo, and you host San Francisco. That is a 3-game stretch for the defending NFC champs. Super Bowl rematch on Monday night coming out of the bye, hosting one of the premier teams in the AFC, and then an NFC championship rematch on Sunday, December 3rd. You take your pick out of any of those 3 games. For me, Heldy said it in the chat. I'm going to agree with him. It's the conclusion that I came to. The most important, the Chiefs rematch. It's the middle of this brutal schedule. It is late in the season, and it is a road game. You want to set the tone coming out of the bye for the second half, the quote-unquote second half of your schedule, in which you've got the Giants twice, you got to go to Dallas, you got to go to Seattle, and you've got the 3 games that we just mentioned. You want to set the tone right? Go in there and make up for what happened in the Super Bowl and go to Kansas City and win a football game. You want to talk about most important? That could be the difference maker in a lot of ways. Starting off the second half of the schedule, primetime game, Monday Night Football, on the road, Super Bowl rematch. A lot of great storylines, a lot of great narratives that can develop there. So for me, at Kansas City, coming out of the bye Monday, November 2nd, the most important game for the Philadelphia Eagles. The Washington Commanders. And I think when you're looking at the Commanders, in order to do this, you have to look at proper expectations. What are the expectations for the Washington Commanders here in 2023? Handing over the reins to Sam Howell, started the last game of the season. He is now going to be their starting quarterback. And for me, I think showcasing progress, showcasing growth, showcasing, that they are stepping foot in the right direction. Total says to beat Arizona in week 1. Listen, that's a home game in September to start the season, and the Cardinals aren't going to have Kyler Murray. Okay, we have a lot of questions about what Sam Howell is, but are we really picking that as the most important game? Are we really doing it? I mean, I'll get on board if this is what we want to do, but I think we could pick some different games. We could pick at Atlanta in October. I think at Atlanta, you don't think both of those teams are very similar in where they're at in terms of their franchise life cycle? Year 2 for both of the quarterbacks, Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell, guys that started late in the season. Ridder obviously got a little bit more run, but a great way to kind of stack up against some of the other teams that you're going to be rising with in the conference at the same time, to showcase where you're at, see where you're at, get answers to those questions. I don't know. We could pick at Atlanta. I don't love any of these options, but that's the game that I would pick because I think that's these two teams are probably in a very similar pecking order in the NFC. They're in the same kind of stage of quarterback play, year 2 of late round guys from a year ago, evaluating, and this would be a great way to see where you stand. 2 coaches that could potentially be on the hot seat, that could be important in that regard too. So that's the one we're picking. We're picking Atlanta, but I understand why you might want to say the Arizona Cardinals. I can understand why that game came to mind. The AFC North is where we'll bounce to next. 18 minutes for 2 divisions. Buckle up, everybody. This might be an hour-long show. The Baltimore Ravens next up here on the schedule. We'll probably have to do some of these rapid fire towards the end. Look, tough division, right? Steelers are going to be good. Browns, you don't know what they're going to be. Bengals, obviously the standard bearer in the division. They play Houston in week 1, not the most important game. You feel pretty good about that. I'm gonna do it. I know I said I wasn't gonna do it, but here we are. We're doing the schedule. We're looking at it, and you have to pick the games that are in front of you. We've got a new offense. We've got a new offensive coordinator, right? We've brought in Zay Flowers in the draft. We brought in Odell Beckham Jr. We're gonna change up the way we do things with Todd Monken. We've got Lamar under contract, our long-term answer at quarterback. We got through all of this. Can we go to Cincinnati in week 2 and beat the Bengals? Can we do that? Can we show that this offense is legit? Can we show that Todd Monken's going to have Lamar Jackson as an MVP candidate? Can we do that? Can we, on one of the biggest stage against one of the best teams in the AFC, team that's gone to the Super Bowl, team that's constantly in the mix late in the season, can we go there and show off this new offense? Can we go there and show off where we're at? Hell, he wants us to pick the Chargers late in the season, in end of November, Sunday Night Football. That's fair too. But to me, can we, in our own division, week 2, early on, we got to answer questions about, is our offense different? We got to answer whether or not Todd Monken is the answer. We need to show that this new offense that we've created, where we brought in Zay Flowers, we brought in Odell Beckham Jr., that we are going to reach a new heights with our passing offense. Lamar's going to show that growth. What a great opportunity to do it week 2 at Cincinnati. So that's the game that I would pick for Baltimore in that regard. Speaking of the Cincinnati Bengals, let's do them next year. And listen, they are the answer for a couple of different teams, right? They are the answer for a couple of different teams, but we need to now pick the answer for them. And they've beaten this team before. They've beaten them a lot. But I'm going to pick this game specifically for where it is on the schedule. Okay? And maybe that's a giveaway as to what we're picking here. But I'm going to pick Sunday, December 31st, their second to last game on the schedule. The Cincinnati Bengals go on the road to play in the 425 slot against the Kansas City Chiefs. And I'm picking this specifically for where the game is on the schedule. Okay? And the reason why is we are probably, 2 weeks at that point removed from the playoffs? We're 2 weeks out of the playoffs. How do you stack up against the team that won the Super Bowl a year ago? The team that you know more than likely at some point your path to a Super Bowl is going to go through in some way, whether they're coming to you or you're coming to them. That game could mean worlds for the top seed in the AFC. That game is a great showcase for where those two teams are at that late in the season with the playoffs right around the corner. There could be major playoff implications for that game that late in the season. So that, to me, is the answer for the Cincinnati Bengals. The Cleveland Browns, a team that's really tough to kind of gauge right now. Deshaun Watson comes back and not very good last season. So to me, I think you have to pick a very early game. You have to pick a game that is early enough in the schedule where you can really get a true showcase as to, is the Deshaun Watson that played great in Houston the Deshaun Watson that's going to play for the Browns this season? Because I think when you look at this division, when you look at their schedule, they've got San Francisco on their schedule. They've got to go to the Jets. They got to play the Jets late in the season. They got to play the Bengals twice. They got to play the Ravens twice. They got to play the Steelers twice. I mean, it is a tough schedule for them. We've got to be able to get off to a good start. And so they've got an early bye too in week 4. And so to me, we've got to pick a game in the first 4 weeks because we've got to showcase to the world that we are a different offense. We have to showcase to everybody that we can compete with the Bengals, Steelers, and Ravens. And it just so happens that we get all 3 of those teams. Our first divisional meeting against all 3 of those teams come in this first stretch of the season. And so to me, I'm not going to pick a home game. They host Cincinnati in week 1. They go to the Ravens in week 4. I'm not going to pick home games. Week 2, on the road at Pittsburgh against Mike Tomlin. You know he's going to have that team coached up, ready to go. Always finds a way to be able to get into the playoffs. Always finds a way to be able to have a winning record. It's what he does. On the road, a good road test for you, divisional test. We know these AFC North divisional games are always big-time matchups. It's a Monday night football game as well. The entire world's going to be watching for the Browns to be able to answer that question of, are they a different team than they were a year ago? That's the most important game on the schedule for the Cleveland Browns. Now we've got one more team to pick for in the AFC North. We've got the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we just picked them as their most important game. And they host the 49ers to open the season. We're not going to pick that one. We already mentioned the Browns game, and we're going to pick some tough matchups. And I think late in the season, they closed. I got to tell you, the NFL schedule makers take a bow on this one because you knew what you did here, and I love that you did this. The most important game on the schedule for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and this is the one I feel the most good about. This is the one I feel most confident in making this prediction because I know it's going to matter. It's going to matter for either of these teams. It could matter for both of these teams. Week 18, the final week of the season, the Pittsburgh Steelers go on the road to take on the Baltimore Ravens at M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore. I'm sorry, we're completely ripping up the rule of trying to not take divisional games because this is too easy. Week 18, you know it's going to matter in one way or the other. It's going to matter for the playoffs. It's going to matter for Mike Tomlin having a winning record and not being below 500. It's going to matter for seeding. It matters. Every single year these two teams play at the end of the season, the game matters. The game means something. And so that's the one we're going to pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll move to the NFC North now. The Chicago Bears, a team that is entering year 2 of their head coach GM regime. Another year for Justin Fields. An important year, I think, for Justin Fields. And we're going to be fair. We're going to be very fair to the Chicago Bears. We're not going to pick at Kansas City in week 2. We're not going to pick at the Chargers. We're not going to pick at the Saints. We're not going to pick any of those teams. We are, however, going to pick a Thursday night matchup between 2 young quarterbacks in this football league. We are going to pick the game between teams that swapped first-round picks. The Bears moved out of number 1. They allowed the Carolina Panthers to move up. We are going to pick Thursday, November 9th, a home game for the Chicago Bears where they welcome Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers. Again, I think 2 teams are on a similar level of where they're at. Justin Fields, the Chicago Bears, want to be taken seriously. Welcome in the number 1 overall pick. Welcome in a great coaching staff. Welcome in a very talented football team and beat them at home. That's what you need to do. The Chargers, these games aren't the most important because I'm not expecting them to win those games. But a game that I expect you to win and a game that can answer some questions and show where you're at, you can beat the Carolina Panthers at home on Thursday night. Everybody's darling to win this division. It's a runaway train. All right, who's still in the chat here? Because we need to discuss this, and I want to decide if we need to pick this game. So the Detroit Lions are the team that we're selecting for now. That's the team that we're going through. We need to decide if it's fair or not for us to pick the season opener at Kansas City as the most important game for the Detroit Lions. Because I'll tell you, it feels unfair. That's not the level that we're discussing the Detroit Lions when we're having this conversation. We like the Lions. They're hashtag our Lions for a reason. I think they can win the division. I think they can make some noise in the NFC. But I do not think they are, NFC Championship, Super Bowl. Like we don't view them in that light. So is it fair to pick the game on Thursday to open the season when they go on the road to Kansas City? I think it's unfair, even though it's probably the one that people are going to be like, oh, you circle this one. Right? I think it's unfair. So, okay, the chat agrees that it's unfair. We're going to move. We're not going to pick that game. Heldy has a suggestion. At Green Bay, Thursday, September 28th, from Tuttle, may claim for the division first. That's not a bad one. Heldy wanted to pick the Packers on Thanksgiving. So, okay, so we have two picks for the games where they play the Packers. To me, I think we have to pick the road game. It's early enough in the season, right? It's probably going to be a very important game early in the divisional pecking order, and it's a road game. It's a nice road test to go up to Lambeau and see what you're able to do with this squad. So I agree picking a Packers game is probably strong, but let's pick the road game early in the season. What, week 4 at that point? Yeah, that's a good game for us to pick early. And I think we're kind of defaulting to earlier games, which I don't necessarily hate, because that's, in that case, Christmas Eve versus the Vikings too. We could throw that one in there on the list. The Green Bay Packers, the next team up in the NFC North. And I think, man, it's tough. I think we need to pick an early game in the season because they got to set the tempo right with Jordan Love. Now, they go to Chicago, to Atlanta to start the year. I don't really feel like those games would classify as most important. Home against the Saints? We go to Chicago, to Atlanta, 2 road games. We get away from Lambeau for a little bit. Our first home game of the year, Sunday, September 24th, we host the Saints. First home start for Jordan Love, taking over as the starter. That feels like the one we should pick. That feels like the game that should be our selection. The first home game of the season, the first home start for Jordan Love since taking over for Aaron Rodgers. It's against a team that realistically you might be competing for, seeding-wise, if the Packers are able to put together a season and win the division, right? You're going to be competing with the Saints for some seeding. So let's pick that one. We're going to pick that one for the Green Bay Packers. And now we have to pick a game for the Purple Cockroaches, the Minnesota Vikings. And this is the team that played every close game ever. It's cheating because it's a Thursday night game. But team won double-digit games a year ago. Team won every close game they could play. You're probably going to start the year 1-0 against Tampa. Thursday night on the road at Philly. I mean, you want to just shut me up? You want to just get rid of the whole purple cockroach thing? You want to just make a statement? You want to make noise? You want to show to the world, hey, the Lions, get out of here with that. You want to do all that? Week 2 on the road at Philly, the defending NFC champs? That's what you do. Now, they're not going to do that. Heldy in parentheses went, they won't. You're right. I agree with you. They're not going to do that. But in the context of what we're doing here, picking the most important game for all these teams, that's the one that we will select. We're halfway through. We're going to go to the AFC South. AFC South next, Houston Texans. And this is fun, right? Because I think for this team, we're not picking games where I think they can win. I think we're picking games where they can show their standing in the division. And so for me, I know I can already feel the chat going to tell me week 2 against Indy. I can feel it. I can feel that's what the chat's going to tell me. But to me, DeMeco Ryans, first-year head coach. CJ Stroud, first-year quarterback. I want to be able to see where I stand in the division. Heldy, you beat me to it. I want to know how far away I am or how close I am to the standard bearer in the division when I'm a team like Houston. This maybe doesn't apply for all the teams, but it'll apply for Houston, and it maybe applies for Indy when we get to them in just a second. But week 3, on the road at Jacksonville, I'm not saying they're going to win the game. I'm not saying it's important for them to win the game. But I think, to me, go on the road early in the season, play the team that everybody thinks is going to win this division, and see where you're at. See how competitive you can be. See how well your quarterback play is. See how well your coaching stacks up. Because this is the team that probably for the next decade you're going to be competing with if everything works out the way that it is supposed to. And so, to me, I want to get those answers. So week 3 against Jacksonville, the selection for the Houston Texans. And I got to tell you, it might be similar for the Colts. I have not looked at their full schedule, so I'm pulling it up right now. They play Jacksonville early on in the season. Both of their matchups are early. They open against Jacksonville, and they play Jacksonville in the middle of October. I don't know. Week two at Houston. Two teams on a similar pecking order. Two teams similarly trying to kind of grab hold of that number 2 slot for the time being. They're trying to hold on. They're trying to, show where they're at. I think that would be the game that I would pick. But you could pick any of the Jacksonville games as well. Heldy says it's whatever Richardson's first start is. That's fair too. The most important game for the Colts is whenever Anthony Richardson becomes the starter. That'll be our de facto position there as well. Because if they're playing, Gardner Minshew the first 4 weeks, who cares? I'm excited to see Julius Brents play. I'm excited to see Josh Downs play. I'm excited to see those guys play. Tommy Adebawore. I'm excited. But truly, we can't get a gauge of this team until Anthony Richardson plays. So, Heldy, we're going to pass a motion here. It is whatever game Anthony Richardson takes his first snaps as the starter. His first NFL start, that is the most important game for the Indianapolis Colts because it is ushering in a new era. The Jacksonville Jaguars. And again, very different than what we just talked about with the other two teams. And so let's look at this Jacksonville schedule. And to me, there's some tough ones, right? They've got Kansas City at home. They've got Buffalo in England. They play 2 games in England, that's right. They got San Francisco at home. They've got Cincinnati at home. They've got Baltimore at home. It's an advantageous schedule from that perspective. They get a lot of these teams at home. And so I don't want to pick a divisional game. Let's pick Kansas City in week 2. It kind of feels like a default, kind of feels like a de facto position, kind of feels like taking the easy way out. But they've got all the tough opponents at home, as Heldy points out in the chat, which I think is a fair shout. But we'll take Kansas City at home in week 2 and move on. We're not going to deliberate too much on this because we'll just pick that one. Tennessee, oh boy. It's not really at Buffalo, Heldy. It's because it's in England, so it's basically a home game based on the way the crowd's going to be. So it's like, they got a nice draw there. The Tennessee Titans next up here on the schedule. I don't know. Well, what do we feel about this team, folks? Because that to me, whatever game are we just going to do this again? Whatever game Will Levis starts first, is that what we want to do here? The first Will Levis starts the game we want to define as the most important? Because other than that, we don't know what this team's going to be. Do we want to just do that and move on? That feels like the right thing to do. That feels like the right approach to take. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. I'm not even going to wait for the chat to try to convince me otherwise. Will Levis's first start for the Tennessee Titans, and we'll move on. We have to go to the NFC South now. We've got the first one with no Tannehill and Henry. Sportsnet has breaking news for me here. Oh, Sportsnet, don't do this. We're gonna interrupt the show for just a second because Sportsnet has breaking news that I would like to share. Yes, it appears as Quinnen Williams is going to be holding out for the New York Jets. Okay, that sounds fantastic. He has removed the Jets from his Twitter profile. I'm not going to read too much into that. But it does appear as if Quinnen Williams is going to hold out. Bio changes don't bother me. But okay, we'll keep an eye on it. It's a pretty big deal for the Jets. It's their best defensive player by far. So we will see. There you go, some instant breaking news here on the show. We have 20 minutes left. We got 3 divisions to get through. Sports, and we don't have time for this. We got to go to the Atlanta Falcons in the NFC South. Is it cheating? Is it cheating for us to just pick the Commanders game for them too? Is that breaking the rules? I kind of want to pick a different game. But everything we said about Washington could apply for the Atlanta Falcons, and it's the exact reason why we picked the Washington game for the Commanders. And so we're going to pick the same game for the Atlanta Falcons. That's what we're going to do. We've got too many of these teams left, so we're going to do some rapid fireness here. That's the game we're picking for the Atlanta Falcons. For the Carolina Panthers, We're not going to pick the Bears game for the Panthers. I think that's only important for the Bears. We are, however, going to pick for the Carolina Panthers. We are going to pick. Do we want to pick them against either Houston or Indy after the bye? You know what? We are. The most important game for the Carolina Panthers is Sunday, October 29th, coming out of the bye for the second half of their season, home against Houston. That's the one we're going to pick. Because now, by this point, we're going to have played 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to have played 6 games. More than likely, Bryce is going to have played in 6 games at that point. We now get a bye. We get an opportunity for us to reset, to make some adjustments, to be able to prepare. The 2 games that you should be most prepared for a season, the Week 1 opener and the game coming out of your bye. It is the most preparation time that you are going to have for an opponent. So let's pick the Houston Texans. Al Bundy wants me to pick the Colts because of Frank Reich. I just made a really great point about the coming out of the bye and playing the Texans and setting up the second half of the season well. And then you hit me with the very, very important note that it's the Frank Reich revenge game at home against Indy. And now I have to slide the game from Houston to Indy because you made a great point. And I didn't think about it, first of all. So Al, if you could have said that a little sooner, I wouldn't have had to make a fool of myself and say a game that works, is fine, but it's not the right answer because the right answer is the Indianapolis Colts because it's the Frank Reich revenge game. So next time, if we could just be a little quicker with those things, I wouldn't have to, issue this public apology. The Colts is the answer for the Carolina Panthers. Frank Reich revenge game at home. Same premise though, coming out of the bye. It's just the second game after the bye, but the premise still stands for the Carolina Panthers. The New Orleans Saints, the next team up for us, and this is a team that has divisional aspirations, right? They expect to win this division with Derek Carr, and then we need to. Oh, you did, Al Bundy. Oh, I now see that you did. I completely missed it. I was so locked in to some other games that I missed it. My sincere apologies, Al Bundy. The Saints, we look at this team. We look at this team as a team that should win the division. They should be the favorites to win the division with Derek Carr. So we need to pick a game that allows them to show off to the world that they are the team. Oh, Sunday, November 12th at Minnesota right before the bye. What do we think about that, guys? It's not a divisional game, but it's at a team that made the playoffs last year. It's a road test. I look at the first part of their schedule, and I don't see a ton of road tests here. I think we like at the Vikings, Sunday, November 12th. I think we like that one a lot for the New Orleans Saints. We close with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Guys, I don't know. What the most important game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? I don't know. Pick a game in the latter part of the season that they should probably lose so that they can get a top pick and draft Caleb Williams or Drake May or any of these quarterbacks. That's the game. The most important game is the one that they should lose late. Do we like that as an answer? Yeah, at Carolina, Week 18, lose, tank, more than likely. That's what we're picking for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All right, so what do we have left? We have the West. We have the West. That's all we have left. So we'll start with the AFC West. We've got 16 minutes to get through this. The Denver Broncos first up on this list. Let's look here. At Miami, Week 3 for the Denver Broncos. They get the Raiders and Commanders at home the first 2 weeks of the season. But I think if you're going to usher in the Sean Payton era, and you're going to show that Russ is back to being the Russ that can win you football games and have you competitive in this division, I think you can go to Miami and compete with the Dolphins early in the season. Because you're going to have to answer questions early of, is this going to work? Can Sean Payton get the most out of Russ? And so to me, you got to pick a game early enough as the most important one to set the tone for this team because they have questions. So we're going to take Miami in Week 3. The Kansas City Chiefs, for them, the most important game on the schedule, it's probably going to be either Buffalo or Cincinnati late in the season at home, right? We picked the Chiefs game for the Bengals. I think we should pick the Bengals game for the Chiefs because the logic is still the same. That game could be very, very important for the pecking order in the AFC playoffs. It could be very, very important determining whether or not the AFC Championship game is being held in Cincinnati or whether it's being held in Kansas City, Missouri, right? I think I think it's important for us to keep the logic consistent. I don't love it. I'd like to pick a different game, and if I was going to pick a different game, it would be the game early in December against Buffalo. But I think if we're going to be logically consistent, then we need to also pick the Bengals game for the Chiefs based on the logic we used to pick that game. The Las Vegas Raiders. Jimmy Garoppolo ushering in a new era there in Vegas. We start the season at Denver. We play Buffalo in Week 2. Is the most important game for the Raiders to start the season on the road at Denver? Or is it their first home game against Pittsburgh in week 3? Those are the two that I think immediately jump to mind to me. On the road to start the year at Denver, or our first home game against Pittsburgh in week 3. Those are the two that immediately jump off the page to me. But I think you got to, on the road week 1, Jimmy Garoppolo, Russell Wilson, Sean Payton's first game as coach for the Broncos, Jimmy Garoppolo's first game as quarterback, and we can't pick a late game for the Raiders because we know Jimmy G's going to miss some time. So we got to pick a game early in the season for it to work. Just a joke. It's just a joke, everybody. The Denver Broncos in week 1 will be our selection for the Las Vegas Raiders. And for the Chargers, now this is a team that we're going to pick. We're going to pick a big marquee team, preferably in a primetime slot for the Chargers. We play Miami to start the year. We're not picking that's a home game. Oh, boy. At Kansas City, their second game coming off the bye. They have a late game that makes some sense. They play the Raiders on Thursday night late in the season, but that's not what we're looking for. At Kansas City, Sunday, October 20th. They've got to show to me, because they compete with this team. They do. They compete with this team. But they do not beat this team. You got to beat the Chiefs. You got to do it one time. The Bills, it's a home game. It's a home game late in the season. We could take the Bills, Al Bundy. Primetime versus the Jets. It's a Monday night game on the road. Okay. We got 3 good options. We got at Kansas City. We got at the Jets on primetime. We got another primetime game against the Ravens. Oh boy, we've got options here, guys. The most important game for the Chargers. I kind of want to pick a road game. So I default to at Jets or at Chiefs. Primetime, the world's watching. We're going to go Monday Night Football. Herbert, Rodgers, at MetLife Stadium. That's what we're going to pick for the Chargers. All right. We have 12 minutes here to get through the NFC West. The Cardinals, this is easy. This is easy. And I know the tank jokes are going to be in the chat, but this is not the answer for this. The answer for this game is the first game that Kyler Murray is back for the Arizona Cardinals. That is the most important game for this team, and here's why. Monty Ossenfort, his first year as the GM, he evaluated this roster, watched tape, evaluated this roster, and made roster decisions for this upcoming year. But there is a difference between being able to watch tape and now being in charge of this team, being able to see how they conduct themselves over the course of a 17, 18-week season. And so for Monty Ossenfort, this is an evaluation year. And to me, the only way you can truly evaluate where you think your team is at is you've got to get the quarterback you've paid hundreds of millions of dollars to back into the lineup and see what this team looks like, because you've done a great job. I thought they had a great draft. I thought they've really helped this team. So to see where you're at and to see where you need to improve, and maybe, I don't agree, I don't think they'll do it, I've been shouting from the rooftops, they're going to go with Kyler Murray even if they have the top pick. But if you are going to wiggle your way out of the Kyler Murray contract and take on that dead cap hit and draft a quarterback number 1 overall, number 2 overall, wherever you pick, you have to do an evaluation. And so to me, that evaluation only begins once Kyler Murray is back in the lineup. So Kyler Murray's return to the lineup for the Arizona Cardinals begins a stretch for this team where they're going to be able to really, truly evaluate what they have. And so that would be the game that I would pick for the Arizona Cardinals. Now, that was my nice way of saying the Cardinals aren't going to be very good, and I picked a game for them. I now have to attempt to pick a game for the Los Angeles Rams, and I don't have anything good to say about them. What do we want to do here? The same thing, the same principle applied for the Bucks? Pick a game to tank late in the season? I don't know. The most important game for the Los Angeles Rams? The most important game for the Los Angeles Rams. This team's not going to be any good. This is the hardest team to pick a game for. The most important game, I don't know, the Cardinals at home Sunday, October 15th. Whatever game Stenson takes over. No, hell, we're not doing that. Give me the Cardinals. What week is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, you know what? Sunday, October 1st on the road at Indy. Okay? You should go in there and be able to win the game. You got Matt Stafford and Sean McVay. Go in there and win the game. If you don't, there you go. That's the most important game because we'll learn very quickly. You play at Seattle, San Francisco, and at Cincinnati to start the season. I'm not picking you to win any of those games. But week 4 at Indy, you should win that game. That's the pick for the Rams. The San Francisco 49ers. Part of me wants to pick the game where Brock Purdy returns just to keep this team going of quarterbacks returning for their team. But let's pick a marquee matchup for this team in a key spot. Let's pick a road game. Monday, October 23rd at Minnesota. Monday Night Football could be one. We could pick the game at Philly, Sunday, December 3rd. That might be the one. Sunday, December 3rd at Philly. Late afternoon game. Yeah, that late in the season could mean the difference for the playoff pecking order. That's the game we're going to pick. At Philly, Sunday, December 3rd, for the San Francisco 49ers. We've got one more here. Seattle, the next team up, the last team up for us here on the show. 45-plus minutes for the show here today. It's not going to be a long post show, I'll tell you that much. The Seattle Seahawks. And I think looking at this team, we evaluate them as, if they can be the first half team that they were from a year ago, they're going to be impressive. They're going to be able to play really well. Second half, the last couple years with Russ there, last year with Geno, they kind of fall off a cliff from an offensive perspective, specifically passing the football. And so to me, we've got to pick a game here for the Seattle Seahawks that's going to be a true test. We picked the Giants game for the Giants. Do we want to just pick it again for the Seahawks? I kind of would like to pick a different game. But they start the year home against the Rams. They should win. They go, no. At Detroit week 2, folks? Are we overlooking that? Are we overlooking at Detroit week 2? People are saying at Baltimore week 9? But why at Baltimore? Why at Baltimore? Because divisional games are going to, or conference games are going to matter when it comes to tiebreakers. You don't tell me at Detroit week 2. You don't think we look at those teams kind of similarly? Because is anybody really picking in week 9 them to go to Baltimore and win? And what are we going to learn from that game by that point? They have a bye already. Like I think we got to pick a game early in the season. I think we got to pick either of the 2 road games, at Detroit or at New York, early in the season. San Francisco at home on Thanksgiving. San Francisco at home on Thanksgiving. Geno versus Goff as a crucial game seems wild. It's true, but it could be. Man, we've got some good options here. So all right, let's think about this team. Let's think about this team. We're the Seattle Seahawks. You know what? We might need to pick a second half game because they probably need to prove in a second half test that they can get the job done. So Sportsnet, you might have a good point. So do we pick? They've got at Dallas on Thursday night, but it's a road Thursday night test, short week. Oh no, it's a full week rest because they play San Francisco the week before. Okay, I think this is the one. Because they play back-to-back Thursdays, but they play Thursday at home, then they have a week off, and then they play Thursday. It's a road game, but it's not on short rest. So I think we're going to go Thursday, November 30th, at Dallas on Thursday night. That is the most important game for the Seattle Seahawks. It's a second half game. It's a road test. It's against an NFC opponent. It is a great way for you to show to everybody a lot. Now, Sportsnet says it'll be Seattle or SF for the division. Yes, if you wanted to pick the game the following week where they play at San Francisco, you could do that. Man, they've got a couple of good contenders. I don't truly think they're going to be in a divisional battle. I think they're going to be in a wild card battle, and that's why I think the game at Dallas might be pretty important, because I think we expect Philly to win that division again. So to me, it's going to be Dallas and Seattle battling it out for playoff seeding. That could be a pretty important game. I'm doubling down. Thursday, November 30th at the Dallas Cowboys. That is the pick. And there you have it. We have picked the most important game on every team's schedule. We've predicted it for all 32 teams. What a fun way to start the week. I didn't know how it was going to go. I didn't know how much fun it was going to be. I thought it was going to be fun, but I didn't truly know how entertaining it would be. And the chat seems to think it was pretty entertaining. So happy that you're all here and enjoyed the show. So a fun one here to start off the week. For those of you listening in the podcast feed, please, as always, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. We greatly appreciate it. This show continuing to build some momentum as we head into the start of the 2023 NFL season. And so we greatly appreciate you being on board here as we continue to grow this show, and more fun stuff coming to you very, very soon. So appreciate everybody making this show a part of their day. We've got the YouTube version of the show, Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can see the YouTube version. You can be a part of the show. You heard me. Listener suggestions for these games. You can be a part of the show. And if you want to go back and listen or see the video version, you can always do so afterwards. The Draft Network on the YouTube channel. So appreciate everybody making this show a part of their day. Talk to you all tomorrow. All right, guys. Yes, a rare long episode. I think it's going to clock in as the longest episode in TDN Daily's history. The Randy Orton news. What do you mean the Randy Orton news? What do you mean the Randy Orton news? Hell, you can't do things like that, my guy. You can't just say also the Randy Orton news with a sad face and like, did he retire? Is he okay? I'm loading up Squared Circle on Reddit. Doctors told him not to return. Well, He was kind of banged up. He hurt his back and his neck, right? Do the Jets get the Williams deal done before the season? I think they do. You can tell I'm not super confident about it, but I think they do. I think it would be absolutely absurd in a year where you are pushing all in a window to put yourself in a position where your best defensive player is not on the field. At some point, cooler heads have to prevail here in the front office, and they need to get a deal done. He's their best defensive player. Like, I know how good Sauce is. I know how good DJ Reed is. I get it. Quinnen Williams is the best defensive player on the New York Jets. He's a top 3 player at his own position. It's just, this shouldn't even be a question. Really, this should have been done a long time ago. We shouldn't even be. The longest episode in the history of TDN Daily was 43 minutes and 30 seconds, which was my favorite draft pick for all 32 teams, which is a very recent episode of the show. So, but we did beat it today by going close to 50 minutes by the time everything was said and done. First I looked at all the schedules, some great matchups all around. You know, honestly, like, to me, that was the point of doing this, is all the schedules have got released. And so what would be a cool way to look at every team's schedule that wasn't cumbersome and wasn't, like, boring? And so this was the way that I came up with. What's the Jets cap situation like? I think they have like $10 million in cap space or something right now. I mean, if they rework his deal, they're going to lower his cap hit this year anyway. So, like, the cap number this year really doesn't matter. They've got $7.5 million in space right now. They're $41 million in the hole for next year as of this moment. Can't you tell they've gone all in for this season? Can't you tell? But yeah, I mean, that's their cap situation currently. So they're going to need to figure that out pretty quickly. All right, folks. I got to get out of here. Sorry for a short post show, but you got a longer regular show. There's a Prospects and Props show out, which is really cool. Jamie and I are going division by division and evaluating potential Rookie of the Year candidacies for every team. Even if they didn't take their first offensive player till the 3rd or 4th round, we're still evaluating each rookie's likelihood of being a candidate, and discussing fits and year one roles for all these players. So it's a really cool little deep dive. We're looking at the odds. We're picking a player in each division that we think is the most likely candidate to win the award for that division. So it's been a lot of fun. So there's the first one out today. It's on the YouTube channel. We've got a whole host of shows for TDN Daily the rest of the week. So looking forward to you guys all being here the rest of the week. We're having a lot of fun. Appreciate everybody making the show part of the day. I know I say it a lot, but I truly do mean it. It's greatly appreciated that you're all here hanging out with me in real time. So thanks, everybody. I hope everybody has a great rest of their day, and I'll talk to everybody tomorrow.